Hello. Today we are going to talk about renewable energy sources. So the main learning outcomes of this short lecture is to understand the energy use in the world and in USA. What is renewable energy and non-renewable energy? What does it mean when we say it's a clean energy? And we'll talk about some basic terminology and some renewable energy sources like solar, wind, geothermal, hydroelectric, tidal energy, wave, and bioenergy. Here's a very interesting map. So this is showing the energy source, energy consumption in the world. So this is over a period of time. This is an interactive data, so you can go to this website and you can study how our energy demand has changed. So you can see from this graph, after the industrial revolution, our demand for energy has just peaked. It took off. It took off from 1950s. And you can see that we get the largest amount of energy from oil, followed by coal and gas, and then it's hydroelectric power. And it's clear to see that nearly 80% of the world energy consumption comes from dirty fuels that will pollute the atmosphere and drive climate change. The International Energy Agency, here's some data. It says the overall, a review from 2021 finds that the overall energy use has increased by 3% in 2020. So we are, however, shifting slowly to using more renewable energy that does not cause greenhouse gases. Electricity generation from renewable energy has risen by 7% last year. So that's good encouraging data. So you can see the renewable energy right on top. You can see that it's increasing slowly. And how much energy do countries across the world consume? So here, it's USA and China. They are the biggest energy users. So the highly developed countries like USA is using the most. Per capita, it is USA, but China is the largest consumer of energy as of now. And the main energy coming from oil and coal, fossil fuels. Per capita, where do people consume the most energy in the world? And these are the rich countries like Iceland, Norway, Canada, and USA, and also some wealthy countries of the Middle East, Qatar, Oman, and Saudi Arabia. It's shocking to see that these rich countries can consume up to 100 times more energy compared to a poor African country. So there you can see the inequality of energy use in the world. Energy consumption in the USA, we are the largest consumer of energy per capita in general, and for importing a lot of oil and refined products. Petroleum is mainly used for transportation in USA, followed by natural gas. So here's among all the energy consumption, you can see 37% comes from petroleum, 32% from natural gas, and renewable is only 11%. And like here, it splits up all the renewable. Biomass is here. Wind is 24%, so that is the highest, followed by hydroelectric. Here's an interesting graph that shows the history of energy consumption in the USA. And you can see from the 1950s, energy consumption in general has increased, but it's encouraging to see that coal is slowly decreasing, the dark blue here. So there is a decline in the use of coal, whereas natural gas use and renewable is increasing. This data comes from United States Energy Information Administration. You will see EIA in the bottom of the slide. So which sector is using all this energy? So here's the source on the left, and the sector that's using the energy is shown on the right. So this graph shows that both petroleum and natural gas are used in every sector: transportation, industry, residential, and commercial, whereas coal is mainly used for industrial, residential, and power generation. The primary use of petroleum in USA is for transportation. The nuclear energy is mainly used for electric power generation, and renewable energy is consumed in all categories, but it's not a very substantial percentage. The end users of electricity here, they are connected by transmission lines that, you probably heard that word. It's called the electricity grid. The electricity grid. What is renewable and non-renewable energy? Renewable energy is made from resources that can be replenished. So nature can replace it. And there's a huge amount of it. It's all driven by the solar energy, like wind and water. And it's most of them in renewable energy are clean energy, and they do not create any pollution causing greenhouse gases that is accelerating climate change. So the opposite is non-renewable, because it is using finite natural resources. Like we'll run out of coal and natural gas and petroleum one day. And of course, non-renewable is heavily connected with greenhouse gases. Fossil fuels such as coal, oil, and natural gas are non-renewable. It's interesting to think, how much more coal do we have left? See, we have coal. So this is a tentative data that shows the world has coal for another 100 years, which is substantial. Gas for another 52 years and oil for another 50 years. But we will run out of it. A day will come when we run out of it. But if we keep using this, we are accelerating climate change. So renewable energy, everybody is like, the whole world is trying to slowly shift into renewable energy. And that's why they have signed a lot of treaties. So how does it help USA here? Renewable is going to play a very important role, creating a lot of jobs in USA. And this is going to be responsible for energy security and for reducing greenhouse gases. It will help to reduce energy imports and the fossil fuel use, and thereby reducing carbon emissions. So renewable energy has the largest impact on mitigating climate change. So currently 21% of renewables is coming from wind power. So out of the 21%, the highest category of renewable in USA is wind energy. And here are the 7 most widely used renewable energies. It's solar, wind, hydrogen fuel cells, ocean, hydroelectric, geothermal, and bioenergy. This is also another very interesting data that is talking about which is the safest and the cleanest source of energy. So here is coal, oil, and natural gas. It's dangerous. Look at all the deaths that has happened in creating that. And look at all the greenhouse emissions that come from it. So based on safety and carbon emissions, fossil fuels are the dirtiest and the most dangerous that we have to get away from as soon as possible. They are the main source of greenhouse gases. So in 2018, the data shows 87% of the global carbon dioxide emissions came from fossil fuels. So it's clear that we have to shift into renewable energy, but it does have some disadvantages though. The capacity is not large enough, and it can be unreliable and less efficient. And initial cost of installing it can be very expensive. And it can create a little bit of pollution. Like when they make solar panels, it does pollute the environment. Here's some terminology I want you to go over. So renewable energy and sustainable energy are used interchangeably, but here's are the subtle differences in terminology. Renewable comes from energy sources that can be replenished. If it's coming from a finite source, it's called non-renewable. Sustainable means it can never be depleted, because sunlight and wind energy. Wind energy is dependent on solar energy. When you say clean energy or green energy, they are referring to carbon emission. So when it's clean, it burns clean. The production doesn't produce any carbon dioxide, or the use doesn't produce. This is the most ideal form of energy for addressing climate action. Nuclear energy, is actually non-renewable because the starting material can be depleted. So nuclear energy is non-renewable, but it is clean energy and it has tremendous potential. And I'm just very briefly going to go over the 7 renewable energy. We are going to have a lecture on each one of them in the future where we will study the details. So here, when you say hydropower, they are talking about water power. So here we are converting kinetic energy into electrical energy. So the water will flow over from a reservoir, and then when it flows over a turbine, it will spin wheels, and the generator is going to convert the kinetic energy into electric energy that will be stored in grids. And it's very advantageous because it pairs very well with other renewable energy, and it can meet our demand. So this is very widely used. The disadvantage is that it's expensive, and it can, building a dam can affect the environment and the ecosystem. For example, migrating fish will, cannot migrate. So you need a fish ladder. And we are dependent on water supply. So if it's drought, then we won't be able to produce electricity. Solar energy is becoming very, very popular. So the principle behind this is when light hits these photovoltaic cells, it is able to capture the photons of light, and it can convert it to an electricity. No, it will go to an inverter, and then it is converted to electricity that can be usable AC current. Again, it's very clean energy. It doesn't pollute or produce carbon dioxide, and it doesn't have much environmental impact if it is on a good site. The cons is it depends on the sunlight, depends on the intensity of the sunlight. So location, day, time, season will all have an effect on the solar energy. And it needs all these the technology now is that needs these huge surface area in order to harvest the energy. Wind energy principle is that, the solar energy is actually driving the winds, and the wind will drive these propeller blades around a rotor. And the rotor is connected to a shaft that will spin a generator to make electricity. This is also very clean, and it's rapidly growing. It's one of the highest renewable energy producers in the world. And I didn't see this. There's 2 little people there. The cons is that, we depend on the wind. And it's also really connected to a lot of noise pollution, and that can affect the wildlife in the area. Tidal energy principle is, there are two types here. There's a tidal stream generator and a barrage. So here we are using the kinetic power of moving water to move turbines. Very similar to the wind turbine and the hydro turbine we used that will generate electricity. In our tidal, we are using the power of tides, the difference in the height between the high tide and low tide. So this is also clean energy, but it affects the marine ecosystem. The turbines can kill the fish, and they will change their migratory patterns and so forth. Wave energy is also having tremendous potential. So here we are using the kinetic energy of the waves, the movement of water, to harness the energy. This is clean energy. It's renewable. It is environmentally friendly compared to the fossil fuels that we are using. Again, initial setup is expensive. It can affect the marine ecosystem, and it can affect shipping. Poor performance in rough weather, and it can be noisy. Geothermal energy, geo means earth, thermal means heat. So deep inside the earth, in the mantle, there's a lot of heat. So we can use that heat. Heat is nothing but energy, right? So you can use that heat for fueling as fuel. So the geothermal heat will pump a series of underground pipes. There is an electric compressor and a heat exchange. So, they use this for like heating homes. So it's used widely. And the geothermal plant, we are harnessing the heat through hot water and steam that can be used to produce electricity. So hot water and steam. And here's the generator that can make electricity and put the electricity in the grid. This is renewable energy, clean energy. So it is very useful. Again, the initial cost of setup is expensive, cost of drilling and siting locations. Bioenergy, bio means a biomass. So it is a carbon containing a living material. So these are carbon based, like wood, straw, animal, and this is like widely used all over the world. Like poor countries use a lot of wood. So when you say biomass, it's organic matter which is stored sunlight by the process of photosynthesis into chemical energy. This is also very clean energy, and it has tremendous potential, but it has a high cost of production. And you have to let's say there's switchgrass, you have to grow acres and acres, which is called monoculture. And then if you're growing that instead of food, there'll be a shortage of food. So here the dialogue is, are you going to grow like corn and sugarcane for food or for biofuel? So we have bioethanol, biodiesel. So they all added on to other fuel for transport. And then it's widely used that way. One up and coming is algae. So there's all these lipids that can be found in algae that can be used to make biodiesel. And that also is widely used for transport. Hydrogen fuel, what comes to mind is how NASA used that liquid hydrogen for powering its space rockets. And we have fuel cars. So here we are producing electricity by combining hydrogen and oxygen atoms. So the hydrogen will react with the oxygen across a electrochemical cell. So very similar to a battery. Most of the hydrogen cell in USA, it's used in industry for refining petroleum or for cleaning metals or fertilizer production and so forth. It is renewable, very readily available. It is clean energy, very efficient. It can charge up very fast, and you can use it for a long time. So it has a lot of pros. And of course, the con is that, it's hard to store gaseous hydrogen. And it's also very expensive. This is a summary slide that you can study at your own pace. So what we've studied so far is that it's obvious that the whole world should switch to renewable energy. And we are beginning to do that, because fossil fuels like coal, natural gas, and petroleum are the biggest drivers of greenhouse gases. Solar energy has tremendous potential. It is either used directly or indirectly to produce energy. We studied geothermal energy, which is the heat energy found inside the earth. Solar energy, we use photovoltaic cells that can convert solar energy into electric current. And in wind and tidal energy, we saw that kinetic energy can be used to drive a turbine, and then that can produce electricity. Up and coming and always been used since man evolved is bioenergy. It's burning wood and waste biological materials. Many a time it will be fermented to produce gas, and the gas will be burned to make electricity. I love this quote. It says, "The nation that leads in renewable energy will be the nation that leads the world." And I sincerely hope that it's USA. And I hope that was helpful.